Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our consulting Zoominar. And we've been incredibly lucky to have the support of FTI Consulting on this. And I'd like to introduce you to Camilla, Ricardo, and Tom, who will be talking about their very varied careers within consulting and explaining to you more about I'm just going to add somebody more about the industry, how you can get into it, and all the different sides of it. It's easier for me just to hand it straight over to them to explain than try to explain themselves to you guys. So I'm going to ask you all individually to really tell us what you do and what your role specifically is to start with. And as I can see you there, Ricardo, do you want to, first of all, tell us what you do for FTI and what your role entails?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I work in the tax team and we specialize in real estate. So in the broadest sense, what I do is we help clients with their tax matters. Specifically, that is broken down into transactions, which means when a client wants to buy and sell property, they have to pay certain amounts of tax, depending on the transaction and depending on how the transaction is completed. And then we help them every year. They have to complete compliance, which basically means that they've got to submit tax returns to show the government how much they've earned and how much tax they've paid towards how much they've earned. And we help just to make sure that they pay the right amount. And that can develop into more specialist areas of tax.
Brilliant, cool, excellent, thank you. And Camilla, what about you? What's your role in FTI?
Sure. So I'm a consultant in our economic and financial consulting practice. And specifically, I work on the team that does financial services work. And so often working with banks or brokers or companies in the finance industry. I work on a variety of different types of projects, largely working with numerical models. An example is if a company had something that they think was unfair that happened to them and there's a legal case about it, we might help the lawyers assess the amount of money they think that they lost. And so to look at, what might have happened if this unfair thing didn't happen versus what condition they're in now. So lots of types of projects like that, and also just other advice, if they're thinking about making a change to their business or purchasing certain financial products, what that impact might be, helping them assess really the numerical value of that. That could be another example.
Oh, great, brilliant, no, really interesting. And Tom, what about you?
Yeah, so I work in FTI's strategic communications department, which is basically it's basically PR essentially. I'd say it's more of it's not as numbers driven as every other department in FTI. It's a bit more of the soft side of things. Essentially what we do is reputation management for a variety of big private and public companies. Simplest way of putting it is probably getting our clients in the newspaper or keeping them out of the newspaper is one of the things that we do. Within that, I work in our consumer industries team, so we're split across sectors. So I cover sort of retail, leisure, sports, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's where I am.
Cool, brilliant, cool. And so as you're on there, Tom, do you think you could give us a potted history of your career, and so Pete, you can explain really how you got to where you are today within your role?
Yeah, so I was I originally was going to do history at uni, and then I did the classic thing where you look on the UCAS website and I saw the history thing for various unis and thought that looked quite boring. So I basically scrolled down a couple of letters to international relations and thought, oh, that looks quite good. So yeah, I studied international relations and politics at Leeds, and I've got no interest whatsoever, and I do no work now with politics, so that's out the window. But I basically did that, and then I chatted. I'm quite lucky. I got two older brothers who went through the graduate process and everything else before me, so I chatted to quite a few of their mates about what they did and what they were working in. And originally I sort of thought maybe I want to do law. And I went to see the careers advisor at school, and they basically printed out the Wikipedia page for law and gave it to me to read. So that wasn't that helpful at all. So yeah, and I spoke to my brother's mate who worked in law, and he said, don't bother, the hours are really long and it's really hard. It might not be for you. You're a bit more of a people person, stuff like that. You know, I enjoy chatting to people, relationship building, that stuff like that. So basically I looked around for different industries, and it was just basically reading stuff and getting on LinkedIn and sort of searching jobs, searching keywords, finding people, looking at jobs that I thought would be awesome. And actually originally it came about because, you know, I'm quite keen on sports. I looked at being a press officer for a sports team. So the guy that sits next to the football player that tells him what he can and can't say, or she, what she can and can't say. So it's, I looked at that, and then that obviously broadened out the communications thing. I'm quite keen on, not keen, but, you know, interested in business and stuff like that. So I looked into, you know, business PR, which is where I ended up at a smaller agency, and then yeah, wangled my way into FTI, and I've been there for about 6 years.
Brilliant, really good. So you, it's because I suppose you're a PR, you've always been within that, and then you obviously went from business PR firm to FTI, which is more of a consulting firm, but I suppose you're still doing PR within that. So.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I didn't, you know, like the other guys, I didn't come from, I wasn't a lawyer by background, but, you know, FTI, we have ex-journalists, ex-lawyers, ex-bankers, ex-government officials, you know, and there's all sorts of people running around. You know, I sort of fell into an industry out of university that wasn't obvious. It wasn't property, it wasn't insurance, it wasn't, you know, nursing or anything that my mates at university were doing or school. So yeah, it was a bit different. So I basically just, yeah, fell into it and sort of picked the right one-ish, and I'm still here.
Great, yeah, we're still here 6 years later. That's good. Yeah. And Ricardo, what about you? What's been your progression through in your career?
It's been quite random. So I went to uni and I did e-commerce and internet management at uni. And then halfway through that, I decided that I wanted to get to work in property, but then I decided to stick out my current degree, and then I finished my degree and then did a master's in property development. And in doing that, because that was self-funded, and in doing that, I kind of fell into banking. I'll speak to a friend and he's saying, we've got an opening, and then I fell into banking, and then I was quite good at that. And then I quite quickly reached a plateau, and then I felt there's nothing more I could learn. And then my uncle is an accountant, so I was asking him, like, I don't know what to do, and he says try accounting. And then my friend said there was an opening at PwC. It's not accounting, but it's an accounting firm. That's how he told me. And I was living in Nottingham at the time, and then the job was in London. So then I moved to London, and I started off with an admin role. And then while I was doing the admin role, I felt that I wanted to learn a bit of accounting. So because of my background, I didn't know anything about accounting. So I then started studying to become an accounting technician in my spare time. And then once I did that, I kind of was learning, I did a few tax modules. And then I was working in the tax team, but as an admin role. Then I decided this is something where I want to do more, and I want to make a career out of it. So then there was two entry paths that I could take. It was either go on the grad scheme or there was an apprenticeship scheme, and the grad scheme was more accounting focused, but the apprenticeship scheme was more tax focused. And I wanted to go down the tax focused route, so I went on to join the apprenticeship, and then which was about 2 years, and then I was doing tax, and then I was tax consulting at PwC, and then I was at PwC for quite a few years, and then I moved to FTI, and because what I enjoyed about it was basically you get to work with a different variety of clients, and they buy and sell different properties, big projects, small projects, and just learning about all the different tax problems and tax implications that you come across, and then you consult with the clients and help them find the best solution where they pay the right amount of tax. And then that's what was fun, and I enjoyed that.
So obviously you studied a master's in real estate, MSc
Yeah.
in property development and real estate, but that obviously really helped you in the end at PwC, didn't it? Because that's when you first then used it.
Yeah.
For
That's
and so it's interesting how you did that, kind of went away from it a bit, and then were able to use it later
Yeah,
on.
it was a bit of potluck where when I got my initial admin role at PwC, it was in the real estate team. So so that kind of piqued my interest. I was like, yeah, I'll definitely try that out. And then I just found out that I enjoyed looking at real estate from a tax perspective. I just found it interesting, and then I just went full steam ahead.
Great, really fascinating, and it shows how much you can just take any opportunity that comes to you and make the most of it. Yeah, and coming to London from Nottingham as well, that's a big leap as well.
Because it was like I came because I initially didn't know what I wanted to do, but it just sounded like, because the role that I initially took at PwC, it wasn't an interesting role, but it was something different.
Yeah.
And I just decided to go with it, and it's really about what I made of it.
Yeah, there you go. That's good advice to take. And Camilla, what about you?
Sure. So I actually studied in my undergrad economics, math, and political science. And really going in, I knew I had an interest in government and politics, and actually had a teacher in high school who knew I also liked math and was a bit conflicted and said, what about economics? And I said, okay. And it's like kind of funny how much of my career that ended up defining. But being that I am interested in kind of world issues, but also just the quantitative side, I think it was a good choice for me at that point. Right out of university, I actually started working in a different field than I'm in now. So I started out working at a US consulate office in Canada on an international trade team. So effectively helping American businesses who wanted to sell things to Canadian businesses, and helping Canadian businesses who wanted to learn more about the US and maybe set up business there. And then from that, I actually started a role, kind of a similar role, but on the Canadian side. So working in our capital, in our foreign affairs and trade department. And a lot of that was supporting like small businesses, often just an individual running the business, and it's their passion project. They're very excited about it, and helping them to understand how to sell internationally, because there's a lot of opportunity for that. But it can be difficult to navigate when you're, really just a small business. And we mostly work with women-owned businesses. And so there's major opportunities to sell abroad when you have diverse owners, and so really helping them access that. And what I really liked about that role was kind of learning about markets abroad. I mean, I'd really only lived in Canada up to that point, and helping people who were so passionate about their projects and what they were working on. And so at that point, I knew I liked that kind of consulting aspect, but I also wanted to upgrade my economic skills and work in a more quantitative role. And so from that, working in that department in another agency in Canada, I applied to my master's in economics here in London. Just knowing there's some great schools here in economics and more job opportunities in the economics field. And I guess having worked with people who were doing international business, I really felt I wanted that international experience and to go live in a different country. And so I came here, and then obviously since then have been in my role at FTI. So yeah, I think it's quite interesting at my job now, using some more skills from my education, more quantitative skills, and also we received some training in accounting and finance, and kind of see the practical aspects of that. And so it's kind of building on, I guess, my previous experience and putting what I learned in school into a more practical context.
Cool, brilliant. So I'm going to ask you guys to, and you can kind of work together. I'll go first to Tom, but you can kind of work together on this to really explain what FTI in general, really what consulting is and how it works as an industry. Tom, if you want to go first, and then you guys can like chip into that.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I can open up with a really general statement, then the
Yeah.
guys can go. Yeah. I mean, FTI is it's a big consulting company, but within that, our competitors are you look at EY, KPMG, PwC, Deloitte on one side of things, but you've also got Accenture, Edelman, the other big like consulting firms on the other side. So within consulting, we do a lot of different types of things. So we have 5 sort of vertical business lines, which are split up, and obviously we're sat from 3 of the 5. But in general, I think FTI helps businesses through change. issues, opportunities, challenges, all that sort of stuff. So, you know, we can work on the upside of things when it's happening. If a business is looking to grow and they want to buy someone, or they want to, you know, expand into a new market or stuff like that. You know, if they triple their revenue and they've got to pay more tax, and that's where Ricardo comes in and tells them how much they need to set aside, like savings account. But we also, you know, we do the downside of things. So a lot of what I do is issues management for clients. So when things aren't going that well, what you read in the newspaper, stuff like that. So I think, you know, that's one of the simpler ways of explaining what FTI does. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance in that, but in general, you know, helping business through transformation is one of the key parts.
Does a business have FTI as their consultant always, or when they have an issue, would they go and look for different range of consultancies and then choose FTI?
Well, I'll jump in now. Let me
Yeah.
So I think what it is basically, from my point of view, or from especially what my team does, we provide solutions for our clients, solutions for problems that they didn't know they had in the past, solutions for problems that they may be tackling in the present, and also solutions to problems that they don't know that they're going to happen in the future. And with some clients, the problems could be seasonal, monthly, weekly, not weekly, or annually, and then we can either help them on a one-off basis or on an annual basis, or just ongoing, where they will just email us. They will have a person of contact, and they'll email us with a question or a query or something's come up. Because in every one of the teams that me, Tom, and Camilla work in, like, the landscape is always changing, and where we provide a solution today, that solution may need to change. So it's just helping our clients through change and how the economy changes and all the different dynamics of the industries that we specialize in.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I suppose at the moment you guys are all having to stay one step ahead of everything. You must be very, very busy in all areas at the moment.
For example, I can give you an example from a tax point of view. So we deal with clients that are based in the UK, which we call them corporates. And then we have clients who are in another country but have property in the UK, and we call them non-resident companies or non-resident landlords. And for as long as I can remember, they've been treated separately, but then up until April this year, they now get treated as if they were based in the UK and they all live in the UK. So any non-UK clients that has UK property is treated as being a UK client from a tax perspective. So we've had to consult with all of our non-resident clients and explain to them the changes that they are aware of and the changes that they are not aware of, and just letting them know that if anything else comes up, they can come to us. And if they have any queries, they can come to us as well.
Okay, that's really interesting. Camilla, I'm going to ask you something slightly different. I suppose that's a funny sound somewhere coming in.
Sorry, that's the motorway I live underneath. Let me go and shut my window.
Oh, don't worry. Camilla, what's interesting is, if you think I want to be a consultant, obviously, when you're leaving university or your education, you're not going to have all the information to consult from a client from day one. So can you explain to me how FTI or any other consultancy firm would train you to become a consultant?
Sure. So what I would say first is, just to add to what they've mentioned about consulting, is not all of our projects are the same. Like, you do face a lot of different types of issues. And so I think there's a certain amount of training and preparation you can do for that. And a lot of it is learned on the job, given that you can do really deep dives on specific topics for one project, and then that you kind of add that to your expertise, but maybe the next project is on something quite different. And so you kind of progress in your knowledge with each project, and as well with how comfortable you are at facing an issue that you've never seen before. So I think that's what I kind of recognize a lot from when I started even till now, is just the way that you approach a certain problem. So even if it's an absolutely new topic, you kind of know how to think through it and like do some research and get comfortable with dealing in an entirely new area. And so there's a lot of learning opportunities. And I don't think that stops at any point. Eventually the partners, the people who run our firm, like they're really considered experts in their field just because of that progressive experience. When you start at FTI, you do have a 2-week kind of induction training, which I think some of it, they do it together with the comms and tax and other new joiners who come out of university. And then just do some kind of general accounting training and talking about the different parts of FTI. And then you kind of have some resources to go back to of common ideas and topics that might come up in your work. But because what we do is so diverse, I think so much of it is learned on the job. And I'm grateful to have managers and slightly more senior colleagues who really, at the beginning of a project, kind of talk to you about whether you're familiar and might give you some materials to look over so that you can really get up to speed. And then at different points in your career, so we started out working towards an accounting qualification or a financial analyst qualification. So you still get a little bit of academic training as well. And then you have at certain stages additional training, maybe on softer skills or management skills, or eventually expert like testimony skills if you really are becoming an expert and partner in that field. So yeah, definitely lots of different technical and more managerial trainings as your career progresses.
And I know that some consultancy firms send their consultants out into the field, into different organisations if they're trying to bring about change and things like that. Do you do that at FTI, or is it just different areas of FTI that do that more than other areas?
I imagine that would vary a lot between the different teams, with some teams maybe in your divisions or other divisions being more implementation focused, so going to a client site. I've only done that on one project because it was more of an advisory project. A business was closing part of its business, and so we needed to be there to get information, to talk to their managers, to talk to their employees. Whereas a lot of what I do most of the time is research and writing and financial modeling that you don't really need to always be client facing. So we do that a lot from our offices or from our homes right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
some FTI teams do all their work at the client site, and some don't at all, but you know, some go, depends what the situation is.
Cool, that's interesting. So obviously you guys work in various different teams, but what kind of person as an organization do you think a consulting firm would look at? What kind of skills do you think people need to have a career in consulting? Tom, you're there, so I'll ask you.
I think that it's an easy answer. It's everything. Mm-hmm. You know, you work for a business that's as diverse as FTI or a big consulting business. They're not looking for the same person. They're looking for all different types of people to offer different expertise, different points of view, different different experience, stuff like that. You know, that's what I find is one of the best things about working at a big company like FTI is, you know, there's knowledge in the business, which is, you know, totally what you don't know, or, you know, even between us three, like the sort of skill set is quite different, and, you know, that's the best thing. And so there isn't one really. There isn't like a model, you know, for a consultant at all. And I think that's the best thing. I mean, maybe there was 30, 40 years ago, whatever, but you know, now it's increasingly firms are looking to be as diverse as possible and have people from different places, different countries, all that sort of stuff to basically offer to drive the business forward as best you can and offer clients and whoever else you're working for, you know, a diverse and different skill set, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's helpful, really helpful. Can either the other two of you add to that at all?
Yeah, I was going to say, following on, I think Tom covered most of it. It was a really good answer. What I would do to add to that, is that FTI are not expecting you to know everything. They don't expect you to come into the firm knowing exactly what to do within the role. They expect you to have a willingness to learn, to want to get up to speed. Because basically it's just like a role that you grow into. And what Camilla was saying about how you learn, you kind of on like a 3-pronged attack. So you're learning on the job, you're learning formal training, and then you've got in-house training, and the majority of the learning that you do is what you do yourself, you do on the job. So you've just got to be very proactive and use your initiative. And I think you can't ask for more than that.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful. Yeah, proactive and using initiative. So with everybody now still in a degree of lockdown, if they were thinking about their careers and wanting to go into consultancy and looking at different firms, what do you suggest they should be looking for in firms? How would they do their research and try and get ahead?
I mean, I can start with yeah, I think just doing as much research and thinking about what specifically interests you as a topic. Just, if genuinely you hear something in the news and it just piques your interest, like that is a good sign that there could be a fit for you. Because consulting is so broad, even within each of our divisions, there's so many different projects. And if you kind of get in as a graduate, you get a chance to kind of explore different topics and then see where you really want to focus your energy and your expertise later. So really, I'd say follow your genuine interests. Speak to as many people that do the jobs that you would do as you can. Doesn't have to be somebody running the company. Someone at a graduate level that you'd expect to join at can give you an idea. Okay, this is kind of what the firm's general strategic message is, but what would I actually be doing day to day? So then kind of you've explored those topics that interest you, but you also know what you would actually be doing once you join. And honestly, if something sounds interesting to you, and I think once you have all of that information and you've met people, that you'll know if it's a natural fit. Whereas if you're just kind of looking at a website, it might become a little bit overwhelming and difficult to discern because consulting is so broad. And I think also don't think of your first job as having to be where you spend your entire career. If you find it on the first try and it's your passion, like that's amazing. But each experience kind of teaches you a bit more about your skills and about what you like. And there's so many transferable skills in consulting, to other industries and back and forth that no experience will kind of base, like it will help you if you don't know your whole life plan. It will help you find that in different steps and stages after that.
That's great. That's a really, really good answer. Do you have any more to add to that, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great answer. I mean, what I thought, if I'm ever interviewing or meeting people who are looking at a career, and what I do is, it's always if they have examples of the work you've done. So you might look at FTI, as Camilla was saying, you can go on the website and it will tell you all the stuff that we're doing or amazing at. But it's if you look on the news tab or something else like that, and you see us mention working on a particular type of deal, is a good way of doing it. And exactly that, do your research. Like what I found when I was looking at jobs and stuff like that, people are more than helpful on LinkedIn. If you drop them a message and say, look, I'm a graduate or I'm at school, I'm looking to do this, would you mind telling me what you like about your job? I mean, some people don't respond, but I was pleasantly surprised by how many people are willing to offer up, not free advice, basically, to talk you through their experience and where they got to and work and all that sort of stuff. And people are always there, and most of the time really happy to help you. And I think that was really helpful for me, just picking people's brains and asking, like, okay, so give me an example of what you've done recently, and do you like the sound of that and stuff like that. So yeah, a bit of research helps, and knowing exactly what you do, but also asking people, because it's so easy now to get in touch with people at various businesses through LinkedIn or whatever, and use that. Don't be afraid to do that.
On that note, two things. First of all, anybody, if you have any questions, can you start writing them in the group chat so we can start going through that? And that would be great. And the other thing is, so Tom, give us an example of a project you've done recently.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if, so I'm quite like, in our team, we do a lot of sort of a range of sectors, but one thing I was particularly keen on is sports, and luckily that falls within consumer industry. So we've been lucky enough in our team to do quite a lot of football deals. So we did a couple of buyouts. I mean, this is funny when I get interested in it as a fan, but we did the buyout of West Brom and also Southampton football clubs by foreign owners, which was good fun. And particularly because unfortunately I'm an Arsenal fan, but it's great because you have that intersection of business and fans as well. So you've obviously got people that are so emotionally and financially invested in something, and someone else that's coming in that's keen to learn the culture of a particular club, of a city. It all changes. So they're the ones I found the most interesting and quite exciting. That's a good one because I like sports, and being able to do a bit of that in work helps.
Great. And Camilla, what about you? What's a recent project that you've been working on?
Sure. So one project that I worked on since I joined, so I should explain a little bit of background. So it involved a private equity company. And so what those companies do is basically buy other companies that they think they could improve. So they might see a company and say, oh, I could manage that better. I have this idea that could make it run more efficiently, make it worth more money, and then eventually sell it. And what happened was that a private equity company agreed to buy another company and was optimistic, I suppose, in how much better they could make the company be once they were managing it, and then decided later that they didn't want to go through with that agreement. And basically during that time to the present, the value of that company, like they were struggling a little bit more, and so maybe they didn't have as much money that they were expecting to make. And so what we had to do was analyze the amount of money the company lost by not being able to sell to the private equity company, if that makes sense. Because they were thinking, okay, we'll get this amount, and then some time goes by, and then that agreement falls through. So they felt that they'd lost money, been financially hurt by that. And so it was quite interesting to do that analysis and look at. You have to look at what was projected in the past, and then was that reasonable? Why did they back out? What hypothetically would this have been worth if it didn't happen? It's quite an interesting project. I hope that makes sense. I know there's some new concepts in there, but personally not concepts that I even knew before really working on that. So it's an example of something where, maybe a term that you've heard in the news sometime but don't really get, and then getting to actually work on the details of that. That was an example of that experience.
No, it makes sense to me, definitely. And Ricardo, what about you? Any recent clients or projects that you've been working on?
I did have a really interesting one when I started at FTI. Let me just give you a bit of background. So in a project, when there's transactions, there's one of two ways that it can go. So when a client wants to purchase a property, they can either do it by way of a share deal or by way of a corporate deal. Or asset, on other terms, asset deal. So a share deal is where they buy a company that owns property, or they can buy just the property directly. Now, the advantages of buying the company that owns the property over the property directly is they avoid paying what's called stamp duty, which is a massive fee. And then one thing which is really interesting, which I've did quite a few times in my career, is when a client wants to buy a range of data sites. So, like these big tech companies, especially the social media titans, they store all this data in servers, and these servers occupy huge parts of land, which kind of falls under real estate. So one time we had a client that wanted to purchase some data sites. Now these were spread all over the world. So they had sites in the US, sites in Germany, Poland, and the Netherlands. But the funny thing is, the client only wanted to buy one site, which was in the Netherlands. So we had to do what was called a due diligence report, which basically means that we have to look at all the ins and outs. Because when it's a share deal, which is what it was, it's kind of termed you're buying a dirty company. So you're buying all the history of that company as well. So if that company has not really been on time with all their compliance, and they've been incurring penalties and fees, the new purchaser will inherit all that. So we have to make sure that there's no surprises that are going to be unpleasant or going to be costly. So we have to look into previous accounts, like financial reports and previous tax returns, and we have to make sure that everything was done properly, everything was filed on time, there's no hidden fees, and we have to also consult with them to make sure that it's going to work out for them if they do decide to go ahead, because this is all they want to buy it, but then they come to us to say, is this worth us buying? So we basically have to come up with a result saying, this is what we found, you can take the information and make an informed decision.
Right. So a lot of research in
Yeah,
all areas, really.
A lot of research. It's formal because what they do is they get all the information from the seller. They get all the information and they put it in a data room, which is like Dropbox. Everybody knows Dropbox. It'll be like a corporate third-party Dropbox type platform, and they'll put all the information there. And then we at FTI have to go through all that information and just take out all the necessary points. So there'll be the stuff on or the property stuff or the tax stuff or the corporate stuff, and we will just go through the tax, and then we will just highlight, and there'll be lots of teams. So there's lots of teams and lots of countries working on it at the same time.
Ah, great. Which I think you've all shown as well in everything you talk about, just how much people from so many different, what they study at university can come into consulting. Be it listening to you there now, I thought there's a lot of legal kind of lawyer kind of person that could also come in and do something like that, although it's obviously tax. But you know, there are so many different things that people can learn to come into a consultancy business. And we have a question here from Emil. What do you think about working for large consulting firms like KPMG, PwC to gain a broad industry outlook? I suppose, Emil, you mean before you work for a smaller firm, is it better to go wide first? I know you went to PwC first, Ricardo, but I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I think working at PwC, I think, was really good because PwC, how can I put this? They have such a huge range of experience coming in from all directions, and they have such a huge global reach that any project, any experience that you get is not going to be the same as what you do next or what you did before. So I think it's just the ability, the amount of stuff that you can learn, it just sets you up for a great platform should your career path take you elsewhere. Like PwC as a step, as a first step, is a really good opportunity, and is a great way. And because of the vast network, you do build your professional network, and you'll find if you do start at one of the big four that everybody jumps around. That was quite surprising to myself, is because a lot of people at FTI have been at PwC before KPMG or one of the other big four, and vice versa, and it's just it makes the world very small, and you just build up a vast network. And then you may find that what was funny is that I had my own list of clients that I worked on at PwC, and when I moved to FTI, that client was sold to one of FTI's clients. I was working on the same client. It was so funny. So that's how much of a small world it can be.
So I know you are FTI, but when you say the big four, it's PwC.
Yeah, PwC, EY, KPMG, and Deloitte.
Okay, all right. That's right. That's interesting to know. So Sam's asked a question here, and maybe Camilla, you can answer this one first. Do you get any choice or influence in the kind of projects you do? Do you tend to get put in projects that are within your interest, or is it just luck if you get something really interesting?
I think there's a mix. Like just coming in, I was just assigned to a project, and often managers will kind of look at who's available and then book you. But really, when you're first coming in, you don't have that awareness really of what's going on with the different teams, what projects are coming, which managers you might want to work with. And so I think if you do express interest to people working in their project, they're often grateful for that, because otherwise they might just be saying who's available. And I think even though it is a bit of a smaller firm, even within my division, we cover all different sectors. And so I've worked on like a mining industry case, a shipping industry case, a like wind energy case, a bunch of financial industry cases. And I've just worked here under 2 years. And so I don't think you're limiting yourself by going to a smaller firm either. I don't know as much about the big fours. I haven't worked in that world. But there's definitely room to try different things out. And I think if you really are passionate about a certain industry, like that was definitely taken into account even before I was joining. We were allowed to state a preference I just personally didn't really know and was open to trying different things, because sometimes something that might sound interesting, like depending on what your role is, I don't know, you might discover that something you didn't originally think was interesting is actually one of your best, most interesting projects. So I think kind of having an open mind is also good in that sense. But yeah, definitely, you know, speaking to other people, and if you say I'd be interested in working in that, like I'm sure people are open to that.
Cool. Actually, Tom, I'm going to pick up on something Camilla just said there. Could you explain to everybody the strata of kind of employment levels within FTI or within a consultancy firm? Because obviously Camilla said I speak to my manager. So what's the kind of levels?
Yeah, so obviously it differs with firm by firm, but within FTI you have you know, if in Stratcoms we have a graduate scheme, so you come in as a graduate consultant, and then that moves up to consultant, senior consultant, director, senior director, managing director, senior managing director, and then if you're that successful, you're head of a country or a department, stuff like that. And I think it is slightly different in the other departments. I know they have, you know, senior consultant 1 and 2. I don't know if these guys do as well, but you know, that's generally it. There's various rungs to the ladder, but they're all pretty evenly spaced out in terms of experience. You know, some are different. You do the same thing as a consultant as a senior director, for example, and even a consultant as a managing director, but you know, some tasks are different, and it changes when you sort of move up, and stuff like that.
So can somebody explain how the tasks would change from, say, a consultant to like a director? What, I mean, how does that work? I mean, obviously you're managing more people, but as Camilla, you said, you know, your manager chooses. So do you have managers in specific areas, or are they just managing a group of consultants? How does it work?
So in our division, it's largely project based. So you might work with certain managers often, but the manager of a project might not always be your manager of a project. So often there's kind of the experts is the partner level. So that's your managing directors, senior managing directors. A lot of what they do is business development. So like building those client relationships, and they really guide this kind of strategic overall direction and messages that you're using. And they would be the ones that might go testify in court if it came to that. Kind of more in the middle, your senior directors and directors, and sometimes senior consultants are kind of the main project manager. And so kind of in terms of getting your daily tasks and work, they kind of work between the expert and kind of senior consultants or consultants. Though sometimes depending on the size of the project, a senior consultant might take on more responsibility or might work directly with an expert. So it's not that there's always every level in every project. It kind of depends on the scope of the project. And there are different like levels and grades within each level, but really if you demonstrate that you can take on more responsibility as a consultant, then you'll probably get that responsibility. So it's not like a hard break between each level. I think it's very natural progression. As a consultant, you are doing a lot of research tasks. You start to take on writing of reports or making, you know, PowerPoint presentations as well, and lots of work in Excel or other kind of statistical programs, depending on what the project needs. And so that's kind of how I see the 3 different like consultant tasks, but that still can vary a lot depending on the project. And then of course, if you might manage a smaller task, organize something yourself, and kind of like start taking more responsibility as you move towards being a senior consultant.
Oh, great, cool. And Ricardo, when it comes to like line management, do you think, I mean, is there progression quite, I mean, do you say for the first 5 years, there's quite an obvious progression, do a year here, a year there? And so that's one question. But the other one is, how does it work with your line management? And do line managers act as mentors to help you move up the career path?
Yeah, I think if you come through on a grad scheme, I think it's very like there's like an automatic progression and up to consultant level, and then I think at consultant level is more about learning more, getting more technical and learning more experience. And I think from that level onward, the higher you are, the more technical experience and the more technical knowledge that you have. And I think that also determines the more responsibility that you take on as you get further up the ranks. And yeah, I think you do generally have the mentor who is technically higher than you, and they help you progress, and they help you progress to the next level as well. And like what Camilla was saying, like you get given more responsibility. So like at the various different levels, you are expected to do various different amount of work and have different amounts of responsibility. But at each level, you do have the opportunity to do work which is above your level, so that can help you with transitioning into the next level. Because there's kind of like a saying, you've got to do the next role before you get the role. So like, for example, from a consultant to a senior consultant, if you start doing the work of a senior consultant and you learn or what a senior consultant would reasonably be expected to know, then it will make that transition so much smoother.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes great sense. Does anybody else have any questions for us on the group chat? Otherwise, I'm really asking everyone's questions for them. I'm going to ask a question about looking at CVs. It's really funny. We've had so many different Zoominars over the last few weeks, and every industry looks at a different type of CV. And I don't know whether you're who I'm sure, Tom, you look at CVs a lot. I don't know about you other guys, if you're looking at them, or maybe have your own CVs. What do you think makes a good CV to get into consulting? Does it have to be pages or succinct or a different color paper to make it stand out? I mean, well, it's probably all online now, but what do you think makes a good CV? You're there, so, and Camilla.
Sure. So I wouldn't make it a different color just to start off. I think you don't want your formatting to be distracting. I've had discussions with candidates just over the font choice, and I'm like, just use Times New Roman Calibri. Don't waste your time on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you don't want the formatting to distract because you really want your story and your message to speak for itself. And I say often use action words and demonstrate the value you contributed to each job rather than just listing what the tasks were, and really think about what you added. And so sometimes it's easy to just describe a team or a business and be like, well, my tasks were this and this. But, if there's something that you took initiative on, if there's something that you improved, if, you did a specific task for a specific reason, like write a little bit more and build out that story. I think one page is sufficient unless you're, very progressed in your career. You could make it more succinct, just, with using formatting, using narrower margins, these things. And so you really have just one like clear page with your message. And yeah, just thinking about, okay, what action did I take? What value did I add? How did I improve this? And I mean, different kinds of consulting look for different skills, but I think, yeah, you do have value that you bring, and communicating that will show what you could bring to the firm to help, do well on projects and what contributions you give. A lot of what we do, it's the analysis, it's research, but you're giving your opinion, and your opinion is valued even as a junior. And so showing that you can step up and do that in your CV. Also tailor it to whichever job you're specifically applying to. So if you're applying to, my team or Tom's team or Ricardo's team, it should look different because there might be different skills that you want to highlight. So if it says certain things in the job posting, use that language on your CV, because even though you might think it's obvious, the less that the person reading it has to guess, like just put those words in front of them, they'll say, oh yeah, like that's exactly what we're looking for. So if you've spoken to people who work there and they say, you need these skills, make those skills very obvious. You might think, certain computer skills, everybody has them now, but no, like mention that you're good at it. Really, yeah. Use detailed words and action words and all of that.
Really helpful. Really helpful.
I'd say that literally the blurb at the top about you and the job you're applying for is so important. Like if you write that, they almost don't need to look at the rest of it. You take that away from when I look at CVs, it's amazing if someone's literally laid out in 4, 5, 6 sentences who they are, why they want to work in that particular role, and what experience is, and that's really helpful. It's so important to summarize it really clearly at the top, and and make sure it's thing. And also, another cool thing is, don't be afraid to put in different types of stuff in there. Don't be like, on the weekends I'm passionate about going on Microsoft Excel and perfecting my formulas and stuff like that. put different stuff, like put, you know, if you play underwater hockey or a niche sport or something different, or, you know, you love making Scotch eggs, I don't know, like, you know, you're passionate about music, put stuff like that on, because it's so important to show who you actually are as a person, because a lot of businesses are looking for, you know, they might have a certain type of person fit for a role, you know. As the guys were saying earlier, you learn on the job, and you're not expected to go in at a graduate level or wherever else and know exactly what you're doing. You're expected to go in there and have a genuine interest of what the work is, and you know, a passion to learn, and also offer something different, and, you know, be a good colleague, be good fun to be around, stuff like that. So
yeah, consulting's very much a people business. So things that make you interesting and different, show that you're creative, like that can help you stand out as well.
What I would say is, the good news is that there isn't one format that you have to do. It doesn't depend, like, there's not one set format. There's different types of ways you can present your CV, and it depends. You work for your strengths. Do you have really good skills? Then you make it a skills-based CV. Do you have a lot of good experience that you want them to know, which is applicable to the role? Then make it an experience-based CV. What I do, which has helped me, is I've got a master CV, which has got everything that I've ever done from when I started working. And then if I was gonna apply for the role, then I'll tailor it to the role. Like Camilla and Thomas said, I'll tailor it so it shows that I've taken on board what they want. So when you see a role that you want to apply for, just ask yourself 2 questions. What are they looking for, and what can you contribute to what they want? And then if you can take your experience and your skills and you can format it in a way which highlights what they need from a potential candidate.
Yeah, great. That's great. That's a good idea, having a master CV and picking.
Yeah, but like, I've got like just a folder. I've got just tons of my CVs over the years, and I label it, and then like, and it's changed, and it just changes so often. So there's been times when I've put my experience first, when I've put my skills first, or when I've got a profile which says what I'm looking for, what I can do. It just depends. It just depends, whatever feels good at the time. Great.
Emil's got one question here. Have you ever worked in shipping industry clients like Bag and Board or Meza? I know that I know that brand. I just can't say it properly. And if you did, what did you learn? Has anybody worked with them in shipping industry? Very specific question.
Yeah, no, we did a small project with a shipping company when I was out in FTI's Hong Kong office, but you know, I wouldn't say I know the industry ins and outs, stuff like that. So I wouldn't be able to sort of talk to those 3 particular companies. I mean, you see them cruising around the ocean, but that's all I can offer, to be honest.
I've seen them on the motorway.
I can see Emil's been really trying to get like specific career advice from specific areas he's obviously interested in. Right, we're just coming now to the end of the hour, but if you could all, 3 of you, give a little bit of advice to the people on the Zoominar now about, you know, getting ahead in their life, or, you know, or you know, a little mantra, what would it be?
What I would say is, when you finally do know what you want to do, just learn as much as you can to make sure you know about anyone else. So for example, if it's banking, make sure you know everything there is to know about wherever you want to specialize in banking, accounting, even shipping. If shipping is what you want to get into, make sure you know the ins and outs of logistics.
That's a good piece of advice. Camilla?
I would say that it takes a lot of resilience throughout your career search. And so sometimes, you know, you won't know something. Sometimes you will face rejection. It happens. And I think take that and reflect on it and realize what you can learn from that. But just keep trying. You know, if it doesn't work out the first time with your dream company, like, there's so many other opportunities out there. And so just really, like, keep believing in your own value, because you do have value to contribute, even if you feel like, you know, you don't really know what's going on yet. and you'll build that resilience over time. But yeah, just, I don't know, keep going.
Thank you. And Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think once you start your career, if you start doing something, don't worry that it might not be the thing you want to do for the next 40, 50 years. You know, you're picking up a particular skill that's going to help you in another job you might want to do. And, you know, you're constantly learning, and keep your eyes open for stuff. And, you know, don't get bogged down in, you know, if you're applying for jobs that might not be perfect, but end of the day, you're picking up a range of skills and all that sort of stuff that's going to help you in the future, or, you know, at least might show you something you don't want to do, and you can do it for a couple of years, then move on to the next thing, or, you know, stuff like that. You know, don't overthink things, but, you know, get into it.
Thank you. They're really, really good pieces of advice. And thank you, all three of you, for agreeing to do this and for coming tonight. Everybody really appreciates it. And the nuggets of information you've got, I've been scribbling quite a lot over the last hour. So many nuggets of information, and we as a charity appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody who's listening appreciate it too. So thank you everybody for joining. If you have any questions, please email me. Everybody who's joined will have my email address, and I'm sure if you have any further questions that you might have, email me and I can always pass it on to everybody. Faye says it's been so insightful. Thank you. Thanks, Tom, Ricardo, and Camilla. Really interesting.
That's my pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks.
You're very welcome.
Have a good rest of evening, everybody, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.